Okay, so get your buzzers ready. What is your favorite game show?
Wheel of Fortune, for sure. I'm kidding. Absolutely Jeopardy. It's 100% Jeopardy. Grew up watching it.
Are you guys all going to say
Go
Jeopardy?
watch it. Yeah, of course.
I mean, we can all say our second favorite.
No.
Oh, okay. Wait, Ryan is going to dissent.
My favorite game show is Bob Eubanks era 1970s match game.
Oh.
Wow.
There was like 0 contestant screening, so they found like normal people. By normal, I mean freaks and vice versa. And all these people that you wouldn't necessarily find on Jeopardy except for the dorks who they screen in because we are freaks.
This is Impromptu from Washington Post Opinions. I'm Amanda Ripley, a contributing columnist, and we're doing something kind of fun this week. We're going to talk about Jeopardy, and through that lens, get into what this show represents in American culture and why it is still so popular. Now, you might be wondering, why are we discussing Jeopardy right now? Well, one of our colleagues is actually going to be a contestant on the show this week. And we've realized there's actually several people on our staff who've participated in this fabled show over the years. So we thought, what a great excuse to get everyone together and share their thoughts and experiences and insight into this unbelievably enduring American game show. Could you start by each of you introducing yourselves and, I don't know, maybe include the special anecdote that the host greeted you with when you were on Jeopardy?
Hi, my name is Drew Goins. I'm the writer of the Today's Opinions newsletter, and I am the aforementioned colleague appearing this week on Wednesday.
Woo!
Ken Jennings, now the host of Jeopardy, greeted me at the first commercial break with an anecdote about how I have experienced vehicular distress on each of the 4 main Hawaiian islands.
So what, do they ask you a whole bunch of questions and then they pick the thing that they like?
Yeah, so once you're booked on the show, the contestant producers send you an email with 70-something prompts on it. And you have to spend 2.5, 3 hours, at least these days, writing out answers to all of those. You
Wow.
show up for your taping day or days, whatever the case may be, and you're presented with a little note card of 5 anecdotes that they've selected from the 70. So you give them 70 or so, they pick 5, and then you get to pick out of those which one the host is going to ask about.
Oh, that is not how they did it in our day.
That was not my experience in
Yeah.
the Quebec era. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, let's go around and tell us your anecdote and then tell us how they did it for you.
Sure, I'm Ryan Vogt. I'm on the copy desk where I do fact-checking and such, despite my, nationally televised failure to know facts. Back in the Quebec era, we filled out a card in the green room on the spot, 5 anecdotes, and they would say, okay, Alex is going to pick one. As soon as I wrote mine down, the producer said, well, I know for sure Alex is going to pick this one about you almost dying because he really likes that kind of stuff. And so my anecdote was about how I fell out of the car on the highway, speaking of vehicular distress, when I was an infant and nearly got run over by an 18-wheeler. So, it was.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a traumatic episode for me, but I also appreciated being able to, stick it to my family in terms of terrible negligence causing the original trauma. Thanks for. Well, Alex said that's a hell of a story. That's all he said.
Now I can see why the producer was like, okay, we're done. That's good.
Oh yeah, no, that was not my experience. I was on in like 2006, so I was just out of high school, about to start college. That was the summer between the two. But I was on Adult Jeopardy, so I'm like, this will be fun and weird. But he picked. He's like, I hear that you do something involving squirrels, which took me like a while to process what anecdote I had even written down. But it was the name of a humor magazine. Oh, I should say, I'm Alexandra Petri. I write a humor column. But I had started a humor magazine in high school called The Perturbed Squirrel. And so I remember opening my mouth and I remember shutting my mouth after like an interval had passed. And I don't remember what came out, but I don't think I impressed Rebecca at all.
I experienced my entire game as that sort of fugue state, Alex, where you just go in, you open your eyes, and then 22 minutes later, however long it is, you walk off and you wonder, wait, did I win? Did I lose? I don't even remember.
I remember the studio was very cold, and they said that like they kept it cold so that the audience would be more inclined to laugh at Trebek's jokes, or maybe that was a joke. Unclear, but
Well, they do still keep it very cold. I can say that several years later, that's still the case.
Okay, so it sounds like in general, being on the show was kind of a experience of shock and awe. You're freezing, you're not sure what's happening, you're like nervous, you're embarrassed. What else was it like? Like, what surprises people who've never, which is all of us, been on the show?
I would say I was most surprised by the silence. It is a very quiet place.
Huh.
At home, you're used to hearing like sound effects and stuff, and on stage, you're missing a lot of that. So it feels kind of eerily library-like, which, I suppose is fitting. The whole thing is a celebration of knowledge, but it feels very high stakes, even more than it does watching at home.
I was surprised how far away the game board was. Because at home, the clue is blasted in front of you, and you can say, "Oh, Carolingian" or whatever. three words into the clue, you're not really listening to Trebek or Jennings or whoever at home. There, I was surprised how hard of a time I had reading the clues because they weren't on some big screen in my face.
Huh.
So I was actually listening to Alex Trebek reading, and wow, was that a difference.
Yeah.
It made me feel much dumber.
strong concur on the difference between reading and listening. That was my whole strategy as like a quiz bowl kid was I would just buzz in before the question was over, which you can't do on Jeopardy because he has to finish reading the question. Otherwise, everything is thrown into chaos. So it was a lot of like, I have to wait until he's done talking and then time it. So for me, the biggest problem was that the buzzer did not work at all. It was like, clearly something was wrong with the buzzer and not with my technique for playing the game. But
Yeah. At home, you have the 30 squares on the board, and as soon as a clue is selected, that square blows up to be the entire screen. But in the studio, it just remains that one square out of 30. So you're like, well, let me take out my opera glasses and see if I can, see whether this is meant to be Rigoletto or La Traviata. And it's really, everybody in my game was just kind of hunched forward on the lecterns trying to get 6 inches closer to the board. But it really makes you listen harder.
I'm so relieved to hear y'all say this because I really thought, okay, like I did something terribly wrong by not updating my corrective lens prescription or something before the taping. And yeah, the timing is crazy because there's a hidden production assistant like behind some corner of the game board who themselves have a buzzer. And so when Trebek or whoever is finished reading the clue, that person waits a quarter beat, hits their buzzer, which activates your buzzer, and that activation is accompanied by these lights around the game board flashing. But they say if you wait for the lights, you're too late, and if you buzz in too early, you're locked out. So you were trying to time somebody else timing the end of the host speaking. And I thought my background as a video game reviewer would help me out here. Whoa. No.
I had no idea there were all these weird, convoluted constraints and how nerve-wracking to be encountering those probably for the first time. It strikes me as listening to the three of you that, in some ways, Jeopardy's like a little bit like America or some version of it, right? Like it's competitive, it's earnest, it seems meritocratic, but once you get in the weeds, like there's a lot of like shenanigans and weirdness happening that distorts the outcomes. I mean, look, this show has been around for a very long time and is still extremely popular. What do you think that means about us, about the viewing public? What do we make of this?
Well, my running theory of Jeopardy has always been it's sports for nerds. It's actually much more like a sport. And Ken Jennings is always saying this, but he's right to say it. That like the way you approach it and where you're like, here are the stats and like, here's your Coriat score and here's all this stuff. The kind of thing that is like, oh, like, I wonder how my favorite players are going to do today, which usually you'd be saying if you were like into baseball or football or something of that nature, you get to say about, Mateo Roach. I feel like the people who you get to watch win on Jeopardy are like, that's half the appeal for me is like, we've had a run of really exciting champs lately, and I'm just like, keep making everyone do masters, make them all come back. They're my friends, and I need them in my living room every day. But it's also like, yeah, this is a thing that you can do with your brain, and we can cheer you like you're doing an Olympic thing.
Yeah, it's you can't call in the fourth string armchair quarterback, for the big game, but all the folks with Jeopardy at home with their arms on their armchairs can read along and yell out the answers. I have played against my family de facto for forever. My mom had tried out for the game, I think, since Dorothy Zvornak did, in circa 84, and never got past the initial test. So she had been pushing me to do it. I made it past my initial test. So to me, this was really bound up in my family of, am I gonna let them down? This is some kind of national proving ground, because it is something you can do at home, but only one game in my case actually gets aired, and so it's on J Archive forever and in your permanent record.
Oh, funny. So did all three of you play this as a kid growing up? Was it like a thing that you did with your family?
Every night at dinner, yeah, we sat down at the dinner table at 6:55 p.m. so that we could dig in time to all be ready and settled by the time Jeopardy came on at 7 p.m. And then my brother and I would, on our fingers, and toes for me, once I ran out of fingers, we would keep track of how many questions. A flex. We would keep track of how many questions we got right.
And were you older or younger, Drew?
I'm 2 years older than my brother.
Okay, so totally unfair. Let me just say, as the youngest.
Yeah, so you knew more pop culture just by virtue of having lived, yeah.
Expect to see him on the show in 2026.
He should. He has a duty now. And did you feel, Drew, like some pressure, like Ryan was describing? Like, this is your family's honor is at stake here?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I definitely needed to, do my best to acquit myself honorably. I think the interesting thing to me about Jeopardy is that given American culture, I would expect that it would be modestly popular, right? But the fact that it is just fabulously popular makes me super hopeful about what Americans value, the way that we value knowledge and truth. I think back to the Trebek era when he was such a stickler, there's a iconic moment where a contestant rings in and says, "What is gangster's paradise?" And Trebek says, "No, I'm sorry. We were looking for a gangsta's paradise." And just that sort of commitment to accuracy and not fudging things. The fact that Americans value this and find joy in it in an era of obfuscation and truth fluidity, it's really, really encouraging.
That's really interesting, Drew. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. There is something where we still at least believe in these facts. Maybe we could get Jeopardy to do the news. I feel like I would totally tune into.
Also,
yeah.
And when Trebek passed away, Ken Jennings, he described Trebek as the last Cronkite. He was this authority figure that everyone in America could agree to trust. And it's nice to just have someone who knows all the answers and guards those as true.
Interesting to think about how the show preserved that trust when so many other shows and institutions have not been able to. But I want to definitely get into why this show has been on the air for 60 years along those lines. But first, let's take a quick break. Welcome back. I'm Amanda Ripley, and this is Impromptu. So Jeopardy started in 1964. Yes, 1964. The Price is Right first aired even earlier, and Wheel of Fortune and Family Feud have been going since the 1970s. All of these shows are still surprisingly big ratings hits for the networks, even as streaming grows more popular. And the era of sitting down at a specific time to watch something feels weird and rare. I mean, we're talking, I think it's something like 9 million people watch this show every time it airs. I mean, you just don't get those numbers outside of live sporting events these days. So why have game shows stood the test of time? What is the appeal?
Part of the joy of Jeopardy for me watching, what I think everyone was sort of mentioning, is the illusion that you have when you're watching it that like, oh, were I ever to go on this show, I could do well at it. And that's why I'm sitting here, with my family and I'm owning my aunt. And so someday I can go on TV. And so going on TV and demonstrating that was not truly what would happen were I to go on the show. In fact, I would, make a series of errors but like I would get the math jokes category, right? And I stand by my performance in the math puns category. But like just the idea that like I could do that. I love like watching game shows because it's sort of having an actual person on TV as opposed to like an actor or like a celebrity invites you in a way that I think helps you root for the people in a way that you wouldn't if they were professional Jeopardy doers.
So there's something like aspirational, but also relatable about it. It feels like real people are doing this thing, and maybe one day it could be you. And let's just go around the horn and just say, how did you all do on the show? Just, let's just break it down. What happened?
Is Drew allowed? No.
I don't know. Did Drew sign a massive NDA? How does this work?
I am not allowed to say how I did on the show until this episode airs this week. So Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be unbound for my commitment to secrecy.
Excellent. We will be watching. Ryan, how did you do?
Well, I was going to say, darn you, Drew, because you've been acting as though you've won. I can see your shirt right now. It's just made out of stitched together Benjamins. I did mine way back in 2010. Like you, Alexandra, they tried me in as an adult, even though I committed my national TV offense as a minor practically. I did not live up to my family's legacy or eternal pressure or anything. I won $8.
Okay.
And immediately got lots and lots of texts from frenemies from your asking if they could borrow $8, stuff like that. I got last place. It was very painful, and returned to work where my coworkers had printed out tweets and taped them around my monitor. Everything from somebody saying, "Hey, this guy's actually decent looking," to a bunch of folks saying how pompous I was, and one guy who said he really wanted to punch me in the face.
Oh my God. So Ryan, it sounds like you're still kind of scarred by this experience. So what, do you regret doing it, or are you glad you did it?
I don't regret doing it. I regret that Charles Lane isn't here, because he's another one of us who's been on Jeopardy, and he and I have commiserated over Jeopardy nightmares. I mean, legit,
really?
where we're invited back, in some kind of like second chance, pure loserdom tournament or something.
Like this is a dream, an anxiety dream you've actually had.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Many times.
They're finally sort of starting to fade. Thank you to my mental health team. But yeah, it was tough, but I don't regret it. I mean, it was, it's one of the fun fact bullet points on my resume. Right. And it's my only claim to fame. So yeah.
Well, let's not forget the 18-wheeler incident, just to be fair.
Thank you.
Alexandra, do you have Jeopardy anxiety dreams?
No, I would love to go back. I would do so much worse, but I would be so much more relaxed about it. I feel like weirdly, like I did get a bunch of negative comments. The final Jeopardy question was like a judge in a ruling about this author included a secret code in his ruling. And I had just read, I think in the Post, an article about this very subject, and I could picture it. And I had even had to read the book for school, which was weird that we had to read it for school. I totally blanked. I wrote, "Who is that dude?" And of course, the correct answer was, "Who is Dan Brown, author of the Da Vinci Code?" So in a way, I'm not better for not knowing that. I wish I'd known that. And unfortunately, I wagered everything, even though the people ahead of me were tied for first, so they clearly had to do some innovative wagering. And so all the people on the Jeopardy forums were like, one of the worst Final Jeopardy wagers of all time, and just like going on about my appearance, all this stuff. So it was actually kind of nice prep for like being a woman on the internet, which turns out, I do for work. And so
every day is Jeopardy.
Yeah, no, honestly, I'm like, I've gotten so many worse ones since then. Like the Jeopardy forums were at least like grading me on my performance in an objective way. And they were right to do so.
So, Drew, how long ago did you shoot the show?
I showed up to the studio on June 3rd.
Okay. So you've been sort of sitting with this secret for months.
Months. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to have like a watch party or something?
Yeah, you should do a watch party.
Pizza, beer, and Jeopardy, the ultimate combo. It's
Nice.
on tap for this week.
Yeah, my advice is to take it graciously at your watch party when your mother is giving all the correct answers and everyone there is marveling at her and she has the last laugh. Love you, Mom.
Your mom should have been on Jeopardy. The interesting thing is that you all were contestants when you were pretty young, but actually just by the nature of television, the audiences for these shows are pretty elderly, right? So I wonder, do you think the show Jeopardy will continue to bring us together and be this kind of touchstone for America?
I think the element that Petri was talking about earlier about how participatory the show is, as we younger generations struggle to find places of community, especially digital community, the idea of just being able to tune in and play Jeopardy with these people on the screen with whom we have parasocial relationships and friends you're texting and your partner who's in the room with you. I think that sort of just doing something fun together in an era of lots of siloing and not much digital fellowship, I think that'll keep it going into future generations.
It's funny you say that because I have noticed when we go to my mother-in-law's house in New Jersey, my teenage son loves sitting in her bedroom. She lies on the bed. He sits in this old yellow chair that's like 3 inches from the TV, which is an old, antenna TV, and watches Jeopardy with her and loves it. But it's not something he does when he's home because he just watches streaming TV. But he does love it, and it is something that they do together. So maybe you're right. I hope that you are. That was beautifully put.
And Jeopardy has teased on their Instagram that they are coming possibly to one streamer or another soon. And I think that will be a game changer because that's where our generation is watching television.
It's weird that they haven't done it yet, honestly. That's weird.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else anyone wanted to add before we sign off?
If you ever want to go on Jeopardy, study Shakespeare, study opera, study the Bible, study U.S. presidents, and you can't go wrong.
Study things you care about. I assume you care about all those things.
Oh, good
Drew.
advice.
I was giving him a tip before his airing. Shore up the things that you really don't want to get wrong because they're meaningful to you. Like I read Chemistry for Dummies before my taping in case like the word covalent came up. And afterward I was like, why in the world did I do that? Because instead, I missed a question about one of my go-to karaoke songs because I was freezing up and thinking about covalent bonds. So, yeah, Think about what you care about.
Oh, that's interesting. So go deep on the things you care about.
Yes.
And then I guess either way, no matter what happens, it's time well spent, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's because it's something that you care about. So it's, again, a metaphor for the American dream. It's like you can hustle, you can get lucky, but in the end, do something that's meaningful to you.
Heck yeah.
Because there's just a whole lot of bullshit on the other side. Thank you all for joining me this week to talk about Jeopardy and the little-known secrets from behind the scenes. And Drew, we will all be rooting for you on Wednesday.
Yay.
Thanks so much, Amanda.
Yay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Impromptu. This episode was produced by Hadley Robinson and edited by Damir Marusik, Chris Sullentrop, and Allison Michaels. It was mixed by Emma Munger. Special thanks to Millie Mitra and Deirdre Byrne. Send us your thoughts on the show. We've been loving the messages we've been getting, and we read every one. Email us at impromptu@washpost.com.